Alright, just a short video because I'm still recovering from well, having a collapsed lung. I also have had pretty low oxygen levels beginning this week, so I don't know if I still know everything that I've been talking about before, but there was a question which is if you change the laws and you regulate the financial system and do stuff like that, is the financial crisis then over? Can you fix the banking system and then be past the financial crisis? And I don't think so, because I believe that the financial crisis is an energy crisis, and that the cutbacks in money available are simply a way to hide the fact that there's no energy to buy with that money. There's no energy to sustain the previous high octane consumer economy in the US anymore. It's simply not possible. The oil is not there, the coal is not there yet, the gas is not there yet. So it's not going to happen. And if you want to survive as a banking system, you have to make sure that people don't find out that they cannot buy coal, oil and gas. And how do you do that? Well, you simply take their money away and you put them in a tailspin in the financial crisis, and that's what's going on. So the only way to really solve the crisis and to really get to where we want to be going is to build renewables wherever you can with as much labor input as possible. Of course not for nothing, not to keep people busy, but utilization of the potential of labor. And you could almost, and I guess somebody probably has made a calculation of how much labor you have to put in order, and how you multiply people's abilities and skills in terms of energy. So if I know how to make a solar air heater, I can use basically scrap materials from everywhere, which is very cheap and just lying around, to start saving energy costs of many people. Every day a few houses, and I can go on like that for months. And at the end of the period I basically cut a number of gas and energy consumers in an area by 15%. If everybody does that, it's super low skill job, and you can use you can use carbon to make the black, and you can use all kinds of simple materials to make solar air heaters, but then you're saving energy, and which means that nobody has to buy it anymore. The money is left and the energy is also left for production of somebody that somebody really likes to enjoy, instead of simply heat. And you are going to be more wealthy in the end, especially if you continue doing that until you don't need any fossil fuels anymore. So you never have to buy it anymore. You never have to work for fossil fuels anymore. So that's the future. The future is where you have so much renewable energy that you don't have to buy fossil energy. So you don't have to go to the bank to ask for credit, and the banks can go fuck themselves. Basically, that's what they can do. I'm just to give one example of the huge potential that is there for renewables. There's, of course, you have Shell company together with Aramco have a company called Solar Frontier, and they make thin film solar panels, and they're housed on an island next to Saudi Arabia. So they're right in the middle of this enormous desert sun belt. They have the factory of the thin film modules, and they use only one. Say they use, I think, they use much less energy to be produced than regular solar panels. Regular solar panels take about 4 years to recover their energy input, but these panels only take 1 year to do that. But imagine that they built that factory on that island. I forgot the name, but it's next to Saudi Arabia. There's a little island. I guess they did it there for logistic reasons, so it's easy to ship. But imagine that they had the factory there running on solar panels themselves, and a little silicon refinery running on solar power itself, which is possible. And plus they don't use silicon, so they have to have some other stuff, copper, indium, selenium. And they'd make that whole process run on renewables, which is of course possible because now it runs on there must be some energy, some power station there that has a gas tank, and it burns the gas and that supplies the power to the factory, because otherwise how can you manufacture at all? So it can all run on renewables. Then the cost of it would go, after a few years, the cost of producing solar panels would go to zero. Of course you have to of course, power the whole supply chain of that factory with renewables. But there's nothing against mining with renewable power. Why wouldn't you have steam-powered mines? You used to have steam-powered mines. The first mines were steam-powered. So if you have a an area with high solar density, high irradiation, you can simply have solar steam engines. Solar steam engines drive the hydraulic drills and whatever is going on underground. And you're mining, you're using renewables. And so what will your product cost? It's up to you. You can give it away. You can ask a lot of money for it. But you have it. It's not a problem to get it anymore. And that's, I guess, this is a little bit of a random video. And I should prepare them better. But the financial sector is now holding the world in a kind of a holding grip, which is very, very, it's very morbid. That's the right word. It's simply a morbid, genocidal holding grip, because it is dependent on fossil fuels. So it wants us all to use as much as possible, because that's where it gets the margins and it extends the credits and it continues its existence. But it also knows that the fossil fuels are running out, so it's cutting off whoever it can cut off, starting with the consumer, the least productive parts of society. So it's kind of like it's a weird type of grasp that it has, and it's I think a fundamental law in each country that's now affected by it would be to ban credit altogether. And then of course I guess that would be a little bit harsh, but it would be a good idea. You ban credit, and then you cannot buy your oil anymore, because you cannot supply it to all kinds of people anymore, and people will start screaming about it. And then let them simply explain why they need it. And if it's not fundamentally necessary, so if it's not farming, or if it's not multiplied. So if I give you a kilowatt of energy, I want to have 1.1 kilowatt of energy back by your organization or operation, then I'm not going to supply it. And all the other stuff needs to be done by people that only get food and heat and shelter. And if you want to have electronics and all that stuff, recycle the stuff for a while. And that's a really harsh regime. Probably not very realistic, or absolutely not realistic. But something like that, there needs to be an emergency response. That's the only thing that's logical in the current situation. Even if you ignore climate change, the energy supply to the world is so fragile, in my opinion, and so unorganized that you need to have an emergency response which completely puts aside any financial sector influence. It's completely irrelevant. They're not adding anything to the mix. You can't eat money. You can't bake a loaf of bread with money. You cannot build a house with money. You can only build a house and you can only do all those things if you don't have money, but if you have trust of other people and if they believe in what you're doing. And that used to be the thing with banks. They used to, give money to people, and then people would recognize that, okay, this is my community money, this is a US dollar, so I'll work for this US dollar, a Dutch guilder and stuff like that. I wouldn't go back to that system per se, so I'm not in favor of a Europe, for instance, with all unique currencies. What I would really promote is the idea that you recognize that your currency now is mainly fossil energy, but that you have other types of energy which is renewable and labor, renewable energy and human labor, and that you should recognize that what you're doing in the economy is assigning credit to use energy, and that you should split that credit in three types: carbon credit, human labor, and renewable credit, and that's pure renewable, so no carbon involved, no biomass, it's not allowed. So that every citizen has the ability to buy products that they know, hey, this gives people jobs because there's labor money needed to pay for this. This creates a cleaner society, because there's clean energy money needed for this. And I still have some carbon credit here. and I'm not going to give it to anybody, except maybe this guy that builds windmills, because he needs carbon credit in order to be able to build his windmills and his solar power systems and stuff like that. But not too much. I mean, that's the choice that we don't have today, which is to choose to extend certain types of energy to certain types of businesses at all. We have here, and that's of course logical, because the banking system wants to co-opt us as a co-conspirator in the whole climate debacle and carbon depletion race. And in the end, you know, I read that more than 50% of the US citizens live at very low wages, poverty wages, or are poor. Yeah, that's what you get. And to say the last thing, the way of course is that if you do it slow enough, then the people will, you know, there's let's say a bright zone in which you're rich and you think you can do everything, and then there's a gray zone in which you're in trouble, and then there's a dark zone where you are poor, and the poor dark zone is ignored. The gray zone, you could say something, but you're usually too ashamed to do it because you want to pretend that you're still in the bright zone. And that dynamic just makes it very easy to flush people into the dark zone. And that's I've talked about before, people that let's say they're in their homes and their mortgage is underwater and they're still smiling and they're still a very nice family. Everybody, let's say, wishes you well with your kids and your wife and your nice hobbies, and then they're in the street and they're still a nice family. There's somewhere in between where you had to go, what the fuck? It's about my life, and there's other solutions than me just, let's say, being flushed into the street and into whatever dark place where everybody is going to ignore me unless I have a very booming voice, and then I might be picked out. And then you get the lottery effect. So everybody is now very poor and destitute and trying to feed their kids on food stamps, and you know, powerless, ownershipless, and hoping to win the lottery someday. That's not necessary. This should be. That's not what I adhere, and that's what the financial system creates, and that's what you could regulate and change. And of course, it would help, but once again, only renewable energy will stop the financial crisis. Not the financial crisis, but our crisis in supplying ourselves with the wealth that we could easily supply ourselves with. We're not doing it because we are not allowed. Thanks for listening.